So, in some of the biggest news out of the NHL this week, Stan Bowman is officially back. He will be the general manager, and I believe he had another role attached on top of that. I think it was something to do with some sort of. It doesn't matter that much, but he's back. He's back as the new general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, which a lot of people have quickly come out and talked about. It has been quickly hated on across the internet for a lot of reasons, mainly related to how things ended in Chicago for him, which led to him having a. I don't know how long officially it was at the beginning his ban would
I think it
be.
was like two and well, I think it was indefinite. I think it was
That's
they
what I was thinking too.
suspended him and then would have to come to the decision to reinstate him. It ended up being about 2.5 years.
Yeah, which as a whole, I mean, we can get into opinions right off the jump here, but like, I think it's safe to say that not a lot of people are on his side, just based on what we've seen online. A lot of petitions have quickly jumped up, even in the Oilers. A lot of Oilers fans are really not happy about it. I know there's been a petition that is, I think, already almost entirely filled by Oilers fans to get him off the team. A lot of people are really pissed about it, and I think there's a lot of very fair reasons to be pissed about it. In his when he was coming in his press conference, the first press conference he's had back in the limelight since the whole Blackhawks situation, he talked about it. He spoke on how he's worked around a lot of those issues, and he now understands the issue a lot more about, like, related to even just locker room culture and how to properly make sure that something like this never happens again. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. I don't know if you want to go first or if you want to let me go first, Caleb, on the opinion side. It's up to you. Because I do
I
have
mean,
mine formed.
I could just quickly jump in. I mean, I don't know. I think my initial opinion was just like, was there not anyone else out there? Like, it feels like just an unnecessary hit to take if you're the Oilers. I mean, yeah,
I
because I mean, there's the obvious downside of hiring, which is
Yes.
all of the stuff around that was his negligence in handling the Kyle Beach situation. That ultimately, because of the poor mismanagement and because um, of the fact, like it was concluded in the report that there could have been a lot more done to prevent what happened to Kyle Beach, and then obviously some of the unnamed players after him. And that's not something that can be just swept under the rug. I think that's pretty that's pretty important. If you're someone on the Oilers, I was reading this article on the province by Patrick Johnston, and he raises a good point. He says, if you're a player on the Edmonton Oilers, you surely have one tough question for your new boss. How can you guarantee that you'll keep me safe? Because that didn't happen in the last role that he was in. And obviously, that goes much bigger than hockey. But I think it's very clear for the Oilers that they chose the hockey side of it over anything else, over um, looking into that more. I think the most disheartening thing for me is just how soon after he was reinstated that he got rehired. Because I wouldn't say I'm totally against giving him a second chance because I think it sounds like he's done a lot of work, which is the positive part. I'm talking about him working with a guy named Sheldon Kennedy, who I believe is who does a lot of work in terms of educating people in terms of sexual abuse and all of that in that realm, which I think is good, and it's good to see that he's been taking those steps. Um, but I do think even just having a little bit more time to breathe, it just makes me feel a little bit jaded to see like as soon
Yeah.
as he was loose of his suspension that he was immediately snapped up. From the non-hockey side of it, I
Two
think that just makes it a little bit disheartening.
not only snatched up, but immediately brought to a team that was just in the Stanley Cup Finals, which I
Yes.
think is another point I think as well, where he is immediately basically back in a better position than he was even with the Blackhawks when like this entire thing started. I think
Yeah.
I don't know, to give my opinion, way too soon. Like this 2.5 years is crazy for that. I think I mean we haven't seen like any response come out like of Kyle Beach talking about it that I've seen. I don't think anyway. Obviously we saw Stan Bowman
Well,
talk about did
Bowman claims to have talked to him.
yes. And like I think it would be a lot different. I'd feel a lot better about this entire thing if we actually saw something come from Kyle Beach. I think that needs to happen. I think at some point here, if Stan Bowman did talk to Kyle Beach about it and have that conversation did happen, I think there needs to be some sort of press release from from that side of things and just like go over that entire thing because otherwise the way that we've kind of seen it happen, which has been Stan Bowman talking about how he's done work, how he's talked to all these people, I would like to see a little bit from the other side of things just because it feels way too soon. It feels like the NHL trying to move on, honestly, more than anything else. Because this
Just
is
to sweep it under the rug.
yeah, a little bit. Because it's just sure you're bringing back the face of a lot of the hatred towards what happened there. Because when you talk about who let this entire thing happen, sure, a lot of people talk about shit. What was the name of the coach again?
Quenneville?
What do you say?
Quenneville?
Quenneville, right? A
Joel
lot of
Quenneville?
a lot of people talk about Quenneville, but I think Stan Bowman was the guy who immediately took a lot of that, and I think I don't know. I think sure. I think I don't necessarily disagree with you with the fact that should he be completely robbed of all of his ability to make money in his career for a mistake he made 10 years ago? No, maybe probably not. But it's way too soon, and it's way too high of a position as well. If you got hired to like, I don't even know. If you got hired to Utah, right? If we want to have that conversation, if you went to like Utah or like really any team in the bottom half of the NHL, just like the bottom half of the NHL, and like it literally came out, and he went like, "This is my place to like restart things." I think it'd be a very different story. I think it's a terrible look for the Oilers more than anything else. I think it's really showing just like what you're willing to do for a chance to sniff success. And
And I mean, if we want to talk about this from the hockey side, I think it's interesting that the Oilers, like from a hockey side, ignoring all of that, all of the other stuff, this shouldn't be that surprising because the Oilers do have a little bit of a pattern in terms of just trying to pick GMs that have been successful in other places to like the tune of dynasties, right? Because you have
think about who they had
Chiarelli, obviously, who built the Bruins into Stanley Cup contender, Stanley Cup winner. And obviously you have Ken Holland building the Red Wings into Stanley Cup contender, Stanley Cup winner. And now you go for Bowman building the Blackhawks dynasty of the early 2010s. So obviously there's a pattern, and I mean I think it's fair to say it's got about a 50-50 hit rate.
I guess.
I think,
although the Holland thing was not looking good at the beginning. Holland did not look like a good general manager for the Oilers. Like for the first half, I'd say, of his regime there, I think it was not looking too pretty. So I mean, who knows? Talking like Stan. A lot of people have even become quick to come out, like you said, right off the jump with your point of like, was there not someone else? I remember a lot the conversation for the Oilers actually before this entire thing came up regarding a look for a general manager. I can't remember. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but whoever they had doing the draft picks for them, making the draft picks for them at the draft. A lot of people were like, he did a good job. Give him the job. Like that makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of conversation in the Oilers just like fandom of like, why don't we just give the role to the guy who's had it for the last month and he's done a good job. Let's give it to him. And for the most part, I don't think there's a lot of people mad with that idea. Like, you don't have to bring in someone from the outside. Let's work with who we have currently in the building. So I think the fact that they saw that, like they saw what this guy did, and have now, instead of doing that, chose to bring in Stan Bowman, is just it's such a strange move. Like, man, it's just weird. Like, what did they think was gonna happen? That's a question I also like kind of have in my own head of like, Did you really not think that the entire NHL world wouldn't explode over this? Like, and with the
Yeah.
timing of it. I mean, we you mentioned it as well of like his like his ban ending right as they picked him up. Do you like you got to wonder if maybe the Oilers were taking a look at him before his ban even ended, which is an
Yeah.
even crazier thing. That's a crazy thing to that we should probably be talking about as well because that is nuts. That is just insane. Like based on everything that has happened in the like with the end of his NHL career. Like it's there's no way that this was going to make the Oilers look good. If they win a cup with him, it's going to make them look bad.
It's gonna sour it a little bit,
It
isn't it?
will, absolutely.
I think
Get it putting Stan
because I
Bowman's
feel like
do you think the NHL wants Stan Bowman's name on the cup again? Do you think they want Stan
no.
Bowman to be the name behind the Edmonton Oilers, behind their biggest star finally winning a cup, and it's because of Stan Bowman? That is not what the NHL wants. The NHL, like, which is the crazy thing. Like, how this was allowed to happen is just in. It feels like an incredible, just I don't even know. Like, again, it'd be different if he was going to Utah. It'd be different if he was going to like anywhere else, literally anywhere else. But he had to go to the team that just went to the Stanley Cup Finals and needed a general manager. It's
Yeah,
just nuts. It's just nuts, man.
it
Like
is.
it's
The the one other thing that I will say, again, just from a hockey perspective, is obviously Bowman built those Blackhawks teams. I do think there was some moves at the end of his tenure that suggested a little bit of a downgrade in talent there as well. I think the biggest thing that stands out for me is the Seth Jones deal. I think that
yes.
was like very ill-advised, and I think just made no sense at the time. It felt like a very Peter Chiarelli move if we want to compare the two again. It's
Hell,
just
it
like
felt
your
like a Ken Holland
size.
move at the towards the end of his
Yeah.
Detroit like tenure. Like you can make the argument with that, I guess. Of honestly, as shitty. Well, I don't know if this is a shitty thing to say. It's just I don't think he would have lasted another year with the Blackhawks if this entire thing didn't happen anyway. Truthfully, like
Yeah.
it was going that way anyway. But I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's kind of it's weird to think that this scandal may have extended his NHL shelf life. Isn't that a
I
wild
don't
thing
think
to
it.
think about?
He would have found another job
You
just
think?
because of his pedigree. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like,
I
I would
guess.
not have been surprised. Because, I mean, yeah, like, Edmonton would have swept him. I think no matter what, Edmonton was going to sweep him up with their history of who they've hired at GM. Um,
Yeah. I guess. No, I guess.
it
It's
just,
just like
yeah, the scandal just, like, adds a whole another layer to it that's messy and just, yeah, I don't know how else to describe it other than just kind of messy and just disheartening. There wasn't that it feels like the punishment for his negligence and causing so much indirectly causing so much trauma um
yeah.
seems in the grand scheme of things to be so little. I mean, a 2-year ban is pretty big, but
I don't
I
know.
don't know,
It
just
doesn't feel big.
in
It feels
terms
like a
of the
slap on the wrist.
like yeah, it does feel like a like the well, I what I mean to say, without the context of everything that happens, you say 2-year ban, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty big. But in
Yes.
the context of what happened and the effect that his negligence had on so many people, um, yeah, you're right. It does feel like a slap on the wrist, and it feels like there should have been a lot more done before this hire happened. Again, I'm
I
not
guess
saying he never deserved another chance. I think it's great that he's been doing work to recognize his wrongs, but it feels too soon, and it feels concerning how eager the Oilers were to
yes.
jump on this opportunity immediately after.
I think if to have another conversation, I guess to extend it a bit. Do you like is Joel Quenville coming back now? Like I wonder if any teams are
I
gonna
think
take a swing at him. Like
I think
it's
he must. I think he must, right? Like
like
I think this opens the door for that
yeah.
because if you're gonna hire Stan Bowman, why wouldn't? What's holding you back from hiring Joel, right?
I yes, but I also wonder if the entire NHL is looking at this situation with the Oilers now and how the general public reaction. I don't know how they thought it was going to go differently, but I wonder if they're looking at
Yeah, I
it
don't.
now and going like, maybe they thought it would be not as bad as it is right now.
No, I don't know.
I
I
don't
feel like
even
you'd have
know
to be
though.
stupid.
You'd have to
What
be,
I
exactly.
think teams, no, what I think teams will look at it and say is, "Oh, thank God the Oilers took the first blow, so that when we do it, it's going to blow over a lot more quicker because the novelty is worn off because we're not the first ones to do it."
I guess.
I think that's probably the conversation
What
that would
team? What teams are
have.
even still looking for a coach? I at this
That's a
point.
great question.
At this point, is there even? I don't think there's any openings. Are there? Probably not. That which is the funny thing about doing it on July 1st. Like, it's a little. I don't know. It's a wee bit late, I'd argue. I don't think. At this point, I think if Quinville gets hired, it'll either be on a like assistant role or he's going to be waiting until next year, which is kind of an advantage in an odd way because at least it'll have a year to sit, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very poorly handled situation. I think. I I don't know. I would have kept him banned for. The funny thing is like I don't even know what wouldn't be too early. Is the I and that is the one thing that I'd say like it's just like it just
I do
feels
think
weird. People's careers have
I
ended
do
for so much less.
well it's the Stanley Cup's talk is
I
is the
guess
um yeah, in terms of I don't know whether when wouldn't have been too soon. I do
because
think there
like
would have been backlash either way, but I think waiting longer than 2 weeks is probably a rule of thumb.
even with the ban,
I think
2.5 years, I like that feels short. Like, but then again,
yeah,
5 years, I'd probably be sitting here going like, mm, I don't know why at this point why. Like
yeah,
it's just like there's no there. I guess there was no good way to do it. I guess you could make that argument, but it's just
no, yeah,
like it's just made so much worse that it's the Oilers. It's made so much worse, and I'm not saying that because I'm a Flames fan. I'm saying that because of the fact that like they are the second best team in the NHL, and he had to go there. He couldn't have gone anywhere else. Somewhere where he'd actually have to build the team. Just like himself, he would have to build it back up, and it would be that type of story, right? Like he'd have to build back up his legacy. But no, he's just being given this opportunity. It's it's just puts a terrible taste in my mouth. It's just gross. It gives another reason
yeah,
to root against the Oilers because you just don't want them to win. Like they are the villain. They have like brought in this guy. Like it's I don't know. I don't like it at all. I think I firmly to actually like if it's not obvious to firmly give my opinion on it, I think it's just fucking stupid. I think from the Oilers it's stupid. I think from the NHL it's a terrible decision. I think oh it's way too early. I think to if they had never brought him back and they just let the band sit, I don't know if I would have ever had an issue with it. I don't know if I would have felt bad for him. Like you, I know
yeah,
to give my opinion on it, I think I know you're saying that. I'm not saying that I don't think he deserves a second chance. I'm saying I don't know if I would have given it to him. I think there is a difference
yeah.
between that. I don't know though. It's just such a tough
No,
situation for sure.
I can get behind that. I can
Yeah.
definitely get behind.
Yeah, it's just such a it's a tough conversation to have for sure. But I think I don't even know. Like it makes the Oilers look bad. It makes the entire NHL look bad. At the end of a situation that, as a whole, made the NHL look terrible, it just feels like we're reopening
Yeah,
that can of
it's just been
worms. Like it's
so poorly handled.
the across the entire thing. That's the insane
Yeah,
thing.
and I mean, even thinking about this is obviously a much different context, but you think about like the Canada World Junior stuff that came out like
Yep.
what was that last year?
In the
It's
last.
clear that this is a bigger problem in hockey as a
Oh,
whole,
absolutely.
and it very much feels like it's being, like we kind of brought up earlier, swept under the rug, and that this feels like part of it.
Well,
Um, so
if
all,
you.
all I hope, I think I'll just kind of wrap up what I say. I
Yes.
mean, I obviously don't like it either, just in terms of like I think a from because I do think you have to separate it. A from a hockey perspective, I think it's a bit of an uninspired choice. I think it's a pretty good. Obviously, if you create a three-time Stanley Cup winning team, it's either three-time or two-time. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna bother looking it up.
I don't
It's like
remember.
but obviously dynasty of a team.
Yes.
Um, if you're
Powerhouse.
able to build that, obviously you have some talent and some skill. Um, but near the end of his tenure, we didn't quite see that as much. And so I think it is a bit of an uninspired hire from. But so I think from the hockey side, I think you give it like solid like B to B minus. But from the other side of it, it's a clear F. Um, just because, yeah, I think it is a pretty ignorant move by the Oilers, just to say that we'll sweep it under the rug. And I think the point I was going to wrap up on was just to say I really hope that this doesn't set any sort of a precedent.
Hmm.
Um, that
I
um,
if I could jump in on that because I think the last point that I
yeah,
was going to make as well was to say like the Chicago Blackhawks had this entire thing happen. The next year they get Bedard. Now
yeah.
we're seeing Bowman go to once again the second best team
It
in the
feels like
NHL.
there's no punishment,
It feels like
and I
everybody's
hope
coming out ahead.
yeah,
It feels like nobody is
yes.
losing from this situation except for Kyle Beach, which is
And that's what,
insane.
yeah.
Like that is the precedent you're setting.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned
Yes,
the precedent
exactly.
thing. That is the precedent you're setting. Not only just with the ban, with it only being a 2.5 year ban. If this something like this happens, you are also letting all of these people who I mean got away with it for 10 years to frankly say it. You are letting all of
Yeah,
these people just win. Everyone's winning. Like it, which is it's the shitty thing. Like that, and it again comes back to the thing of like I wouldn't have felt bad for him if he never got his second chance. So many people have to
no,
work for so long to get back, and will lose their job for their one chance at the NHL for so much less, and
yeah.
somehow this ended up happening, and it's just bonkers. Like it's this entire situation I think is just remarkably insane. So I think more than anything, I think that's where I land on it. It's just like the NHL is setting at this point. We shouldn't be surprised. Actually, is what I would say. I think the NHL as a whole has really got to step up because I think they're quickly looking like it. The last 5 years for the NHL has really looked terrible. I can't think of a pure time period in the NHL where we have seen just such a terrible just I don't even know. Like it's just remarkable. It's frankly remarkable that shit like this just keeps happening and everybody involved somehow ends up on top in a weird way. Like
Yeah.
it's just insane. So yeah.
There's no real punishment,
No.
and at the end of the day, that's a scary thing. Um, to see again that sort of precedent be set, that people who can be openly negligent and, um, well, maybe not directly cause, but causing harm to so many other people just to really get away with it and end up in, like you've mentioned a couple times, in a better spot than when they were handed the punishment, right?
It just
He there's a 2 year gap, but it was it was a move up the ladder.
yeah.
So I hope, I really do hope that's not the precedent that's been set, because it's a scary thing for the league, and it's scary, the hockey culture in general, which has never been stellar to begin.